Final inductee has been a friend of mine for nearly 30 years, and I was honored when he called and asked me to give his induction speech. And as you know, from the last 5 years, I'm a little uncomfortable when I'm talking about my heroes and my friends, but I'll get through this. We celebrate a man who is in his 7th decade of driving race cars. Okay, 1948, that was a soapbox derby car. But it was a race car when Bob Polverari took the downhill at age 12. In high school, spent a lot of afternoons at Booker Jones Auto Repair Shop, tearing things apart, putting it back together, and he built himself a hobby stock car and raced during high school, and then embarked on one of his many and now celebrated retirements. I've been asked many times today if this would be a roast, and haven't we already had 4 or 5 of those? One for each retirement, so this will not be a roast today. Bob learned his trade in high school. Folks who've seen him at work say he's faster with a hammer than most nail guns. But he quickly realized that he would not go far working for other people. Went to friends, acquaintances, anyone he could find, and borrowed enough money to buy a piece of land and build an apartment complex in West Springfield. And thus was born the Polverari ethic: work hard, play hard. Boy, can this guy play. He gets more out of 24 hours than anybody I have ever seen. And perhaps that's why he is still competitive on the modified tour today at the age of 66. He won his first of 38 modified features at his home track, Riverside Park Speedway, in 1971. And that same year, in his number 711 coupe, won the Riverside 500 team race with Bob Kalsher. He'd go on to win that race again 3 more times, twice with Ron Wyckoff, who was seated here until moments ago. Here's Ronnie walking back in as his teammate. And once with Jerry Cook. The record shows that Bob drove 487 of the 500 laps, and yet the payoff sheet shows that Jerry took his full half of the payoff. Now that's not so funny. It wasn't funny to Bob at the time, but it illustrates his work ethic and his integrity, because that was the deal. They would split the purse, no matter what happened. And he held to that agreement. Bob joined the Pinto Revolution in the early 1970s with a blue Vega, and then one winter night, amongst a group of friends and his volunteer crew led by Barry Cannell and his dad, 4 volunteers, a design was sketched out on a body in the corner of the garage that became the white Vega with the blue stripe, and Riverside's now famed Chevy Under Glass is the car that became. And with it, they won the 75 Riverside Championship. They won the championship again in 1976, winning half of the 16-point races and scoring in 16 starts, 14 top 3 finishes. Polverari came back in 77 to successfully defend his title and win his 3rd straight championship. Stafford Motor Speedway beckoned when they moved to Friday nights. What was the best way to get fans to a track that had previously run Saturdays? Get them from all the other Saturday night tracks. So we targeted drivers from Waterford, from Westboro, from Plainville, and we targeted Bob Polverari, who came to run Stafford as a regular, and I think was largely possible for the success of the switch to Friday night because of the fans that couldn't come on Fridays from long distances used to coming to Stafford. A lot of them were replaced by fans from the tracks that I just mentioned, and especially from Riverside. His biggest win, 1981, the Spring Sizzler at Stafford Motor Speedway. Richie Evans made a gamble on a late tire stop and came charging up through the field. Polverari beat him off the final corner. They exited the corner side by side, and Bob won by inches in a race that was broadcast nationally by Motor Racing Network. In 1982, he chased the Modified National Championship. He had 2 victories in 67 starts, a raft of top 5 finishes, picked up yet another 4th Riverside Championship in the process, and finished 5th in the national point standings. He investigated Winston Cup racing, continued running at the park through 1990, when, after winning his 5th championship at Riverside, which is the all-time record, he again retired. 1998, Riverside comes up with a race of legends, and the hook is firmly set once again, and Bob comes back to racing full-time and scores 5 more victories over the final 2 years of the park's existence. If there was a cookout, it was because Bob organized it. Even at the final modified race at Martinsville, Virginia, just a couple of months ago, there's a big corn roast and softball game put on by, guess who? If there's a party, Party Central is located right around Polverari's Hall. In the 1960s, the Springfield newspaper artist Jim Trelease would do cartoons of various sports figures, and the caption of the cartoon would illustrate their accomplishments, and he'd always do 1 or 2 on racing. And I don't know how this floated to the top of the box this week of things, but this is Jim's original artwork from 1969 that I'll present to Bob along with his plaque, and in pencil on the tissue covering his caricature, it says, "Bob Polverari, West Springfield, promising rookie." How true that would become. He had a knack, Pete Zanardi called him a giant killer because he won the big ones, the 4 500s, the 5 Riverside titles. He won the last race at Riverside Park under United, under Harvey Tattersall. Came back the next spring, won the very first NASCAR race at Riverside. He won the pole for the last modified tour race at Riverside and nearly won that. As we all know, when they rang down the curtain at Riverside Park for the final time, who was standing in victory lane? Bob Polverari yet again, for the last of 38 victories there. Today we had to change the rules for Stub Fadden and for Bob, because the only way we're going to get him in this Hall of Fame was, instead of saying you had to be retired for 5 years, we said, well, or 65 or over. So Stub is the first active driver in the Hall of Fame. Bob is the first active driver in a major touring series to be inducted, and he is also the first driver to hold a top division current track record. He is the outright modified track record holder at the Thompson Speedway. He was named one of Stafford Speedway's top 50 drivers of all time, and was named one of the top 50 athletes of the century of Western Massachusetts. He comes into the Hall on the first year of his eligibility, to the surprise of no one. Bob Polverari, would you come up, please?
It's such an honor to be inducted today. When Al Feeney came in the middle of winter and told me I'd be an inductee, I was going to be inducted this year. At first I wasn't sure how to take it, but it means an awful lot to me. I know we put a lot of effort into it, but more than anything, when I go into this Hall of Fame, I want my crew to know that they're all part of it, and my family, because they were a big incentive on getting me, keeping me going for all these years. They work so hard, the crew doesn't get paid, and they just put so much effort into this. It means so much to me, and I want them to know that they're in there as much as I am. The memories I've got in the past are probably more important than anything I've accomplished, or wins, or accomplishments, or car of the year, or this or that. The memories from meeting all these drivers. I've always gotten along with most of the drivers, the crew members, the owners, the media people, and the promoters, and more than anything, I've always been very close to all my fans. When Al Feeney had me get a couple pictures to put in the plaque, I started going through my album. My son had put them together about 10 years ago. I had never had any albums. They were just in boxes, and he put a bunch of albums together. And I started going through them, probably not the first time, but the second time, and going through them. For every picture of a race car you'd see, there'd probably be 5 or 6 fan letters, notes, birthday cards, and so on. And I mean, I always realized they meant so much to me, but if you look at my albums, you'll realize that the fans are the biggest part of my race, and maybe they're a big part why I'm still in it, because we can't ever go to a race without the fans coming down and talking to us, and it means an awful lot to me. Back in, when I was younger, like Mike was saying, I got involved in the soapbox derby with my dad. We built the soapbox derby, and I used to go to Century Stadium. I remember like it happened yesterday, getting the autograph from Bill Schindler. And I don't know if that's what got me going into the racing, but it meant an awful lot to me. And at that time, we made many trips up to Springfield Airport and GB plane. It had a 711 and dice on it, and I just carried that number through with me on my first race car, which was in '54. I built one in '53. I built it with out my grandmother's yard. I was kind of young at the time, and I welded it with coat hangers and oxygen acetylene, and we went to push it a couple months later someplace, and every bar fell off. But so my dad made me scrap that one. I got a 38 for it, and that's the one we started running. But before the 50s, 48, 49, 50, I used to go over and, like Mike was saying, I helped Booker an awful lot, and I just had I think that's what probably helped get me going. Between Booker and, if anybody remembers Bob and Ed Lappy, we used to cut fenders off for them and stuff like that and do whatever we could. They meant a lot to me, and got me into the sport, I think. At least got me interested in it. Back in the 50s, we used to run some demo derbies. Randy Charland, Gene Bergen, Eddie Flunky, Booker. We'd all get in there. They'd give us $25 a night to run a demo derby. And as you'd crash and somebody would crash out or something like that, they jump in your car, and by the end of the night, you know, no safety belts or anything, by the end of the night you'd have 8, 10 guys in the car and be banging everybody around. But back then it was a lot of fun. I'm not saying it's not fun today, because I love all the drivers. I enjoy them all. We have a great time. But back then it was definitely different, and it was more casual. And we just had a great time, and hopefully it can keep up for a few more years. When I got one of my first cars, well, when I came back, I guess one of the times, 69 or 70, I put a guy out the first, second night I was driving that car, and accidentally put him in the wall, and I was coming off the track and coming off the pit gate, and one of his crew, he had warned me the night before, or the week before, so I had put him out that night too, but I just couldn't drive that. But anyways, one of his crew came in my car and dove in, tried to pull me out and give me a couple shots, and all of a sudden he got ripped out of it and got cold cocked, dropped him on the floor, and it was one of my crew chief today. He's been with me for many years, Gary McNevich. Everybody knows Gary. But anyways, Gary came over to me that night, and it's the first time I had never met him before. I didn't know him, and he came over to me and he says, as long as you're around, buddy, he says, I'm going to be your friend, and nobody's going to ever hit you again. So, of course, he don't come with me every day. But another time, just to move along, in the early 70s, we had won the 571, but we were struggling in 72, and one guy kept coming around the garage probably every week. He'd mosey around the garage, look around, and, you know, tell us how we just didn't know how to make a car go fast enough, this and that. And kind of cocky, but after a while I had to take him up on it. I said, well, why don't you try it? So Barry Quinnell, who now is the winningest crew chief on the tour, came in, became my crew chief, and things started happening. We started winning races, and it was a joy to have him. It's a joy to still have him as a friend, and not only a friend, but you know, he's been around the garage. We've been struggling last year a little bit. We got a whole new crew, so we're trying to get this thing going for this year, and he gives us assistance as we need it and suggestions, and he's been great. And he's been a great lifetime friend. His dad was real close to my dad. They had worked together back in General Bacon Company back in the 40s and 30s. Then in 73, Mike might have had it just a little bit off, but I remember Mike used to come in the garage quite often, and we were going to try and get a new color together. Barry had decided, he says, how much longer are you going to change cars every year? You change it. One year it's maroon, the next year it's yellow, next year it's blue, and one year we put fuzz on the roof. We electrified it and sprayed this fuzz, and it became velvet kind of like that. And so we decided, let's get one color. So we were trying to decide the color. Mike Joy came in the garage a few days later with a model of a car. We still have it. It's a little model. He painted it pearl white, and with the blue bag on the roof, and the Chevy emblem on the roof, the blue interior and the blue outside. And really, that's where the color came from. Mike was the innovator of that, and we've kind of stayed with it. We always had the pearl white on there, and we're back to it again now. and it's just, I guess it's 7-Eleven, you know. Another guy I drove for the Zarnicki's in 1978. I thought I was taking the year off, but I ended up driving for them, and they had the 20 car, which Bobby Stefanik did so well in for so many years. And you know, a couple of their sons there used to hang around the garage all the time. They were 5 or 6 years old, and took the oil can and squirted all our brakes one night. We got out there and wiped the car out, and that was Ricky's and now my car owner. So Ricky's back in the game again, but at that time he was just going around trying to help us. And his brother Joey is my spotter. Like I say, we've got a new crew from last year. We've got the same crew we had last year, but this year we'll get it going a little better. I'd like to finish this off finally thanking all my friends, my golf buddies that came down tonight to see us, and especially my fans, my crew. I've got just about all my crew here, and a lot of the old crew, which it means a lot to me to have them here. Billy Pelly, who I was with in the 90s, Tommy Savisa, who's now my crew chief and was my crew chief on our last championship in 1990. It means an awful lot to me, and like all these guys are saying, you need all the people together, or you can't make it work. And especially my wife, my son Rod, my daughter Liz, my grandkids, our family sacrificed an awful lot in the past for my racing. You know, weddings we couldn't go to, and wakes and funerals and so forth, and it really broke. My wife and I have been married 44 years. I love her, and I want to thank my whole family, my crew, and everybody. Thank you very much, and especially being a representative of my family.